Christina, and in this tutorial I'll be showing how to use the 4 techniques of watercolor and how to apply them to your art. The materials I use in this video is 2 paint brushes. I can't tell you where I got them because I don't know. A regular pencil for sketching and a set of 24 different colors and a water palette that I got from Amazon. Our first technique is layering. So this is the most simple technique in watercolor. So you're just going to take any random color you want. I'm doing a blue, a light blue. Dip it in your water. Make sure you get a nice good coating of that, and you're just going to create an even layer of paint across your entire board. You can keep adding paint to get it darker on your paper. Just make sure it is all uniform. The basis of layering is to add a solid color onto your brush with no different or other colors interfering. You can layer things on top of each other, and often these are used for solid and simple backgrounds if you want to have that. And it is good for details. This is what I'd recommend for using for most of your details. Second technique is a gradient technique. There's 2 different ways you can use a gradient technique. You can go with in a light or dark to light or light to dark manner, or you can do it by turning slowly one color into another. So I'll first demonstrate with the pink. Light to dark or dark to light. So you're going to have your biggest, and we want that nice good splotch of color. Make sure you get a lot of paint on your brush. Make sure it's fairly wet as well on the page. And then at the other end, we're just going to have clear. And from there, you're just going to gently start using that brush to mix in both colors. So you get almost this gradient. You can apply more paint as you go. Just make sure you want to end up with that nice gradient look. As you can see, it goes from a darker pink to a very light or transparent pink. This is best used when doing shadows and things that are to add depth to paintings. And it also is good for transitions. If there's maybe 2 different parts of your piece, gradients are a good way to guide your viewer to that second part or whatever part of your piece you want. So now I'll try the different color techniques. So I'm going to take this red and take a blue as well. So here's our red, very nice big blotch of that red. And then on the other side, we're going to take a darker blue, darker than the one I used for the layering. Coming off this almost indigo-ish. And then I'm going to add a little more color of both. And I know right now it looks like a French flag or an inverted French flag, but you're going to take your clear, put it right there in the center, and ever so slowly start taking that blue and start pushing it towards the red. So you're kind of using the dark to light technique, but however, is we're going to start mixing in that other color to where that light space is, so it looks like it's blending. Oops. You can always add more paint as you go. Make sure it purely mixes right in the middle. You kind of just want that nice, you see that red to purple to blue. So it looks like a nice gradient. My third technique is a dry brush, and you'll take a slightly wet paint, just enough so you'll get some pigment. And you'll take a dry brush, you can either wipe off your brush or use another one. And you're going to take your paint, kind of just dust it off. And then you're going to just do a stroke on that blank piece of paper. I know it's quite hard to see, but I can make it more defined. And you can start to see as this brush, the wetness starts to fizzle out, that the lines start to change. We'll try also another brush to make it just a little clearer, a little better to see. So now we're going to take that red, just stroke it along the tips, and as you can see, that you just kind of have that bristle effect. There, that's a good showing of it. You see those lines? Those are great for textured pieces and textured things in general. And you can mix colors. I'm taking a blue and a red, kind of just blotching them together. I'll add some pinks in there as well. I'm just gonna just gently stroke that brush along your paper. I'm going to also do one more technique where you one corner of your brush and you'll dip one edge into the blue, get it nice and thick on there, and you'll take the opposite edge and you'll fill it with that red. And as you can see, some of the blue is coming off. That's fine. We'll clean the brush afterwards. Now with your two-tone brush, you're going to press right roughly, and as you can see, there's those two apparent colors that are coming off of your brush. You can do this as well in a gradient technique, which I'll show in just maybe a little corner right over here. So we're going to take our water. We're going to do the same exact thing that I just did. However, our paint is going to be wet. So I have lodged up some paint on both sides of my brush, and I'm just, as you can see it's kind of a cheat way to do a gradient, but I don't think it comes off as effective. And I recommend using dry brush to add flavor. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything with a lot of texture, but if you feel like your painting's very flat or one sort of medium and kind of not leveling up to where you want it to be, I recommend using other mediums, such as comparing this wet layering technique to this dry brush. Lastly, our wet on wet technique, which I recommend the most for backgrounds and things of that matter. So what we will do, we'll take a nice clean brush. Make sure you get rid of all that paint. And you're going to just do a clean layer of water over your entire area you want wet. Alright, so now that we have done that, we're going to take varieties of color. Make sure you get a lot of paint on your brush. Lodge it up there. You should see about half of your brush starkly filled with paint, and you're just going to drop colors. I know it looks quite strange at the moment, but you're just going to keep adding colors and more colors till you kind of get this sort of blotchy effect. I know it's kind of hard to see at the moment, but it will come about very soon. Make sure you want a lot of paint or this technique won't work as well. As you can start to see, there's these blotches of color that are starting to show up. This is because the water reacting on the water, and I will actually go over with a little more clear water to get a better effect. But you can see that this starting to kind of come together and look like maybe even little blurry flowers. I like using these for bouquets, backgrounds, especially if you do an ombre of colors. For instance, you can take yellows and oranges and then fade them into reds. And those reds can fade, see, did not get enough color, into blues. As you can see, you get this very blotchy, very kind of blurry effect. I recommend, like I said before, on backgrounds. This does take longer to dry than most, especially much longer than your dry brush. But kind of just adding some clear water to kind of bring together some of the paint values and just tapping it the places that don't have really more almost signification of paint than we want. We don't want stark colors by any sort of mean. We want them to blend, kind of becoming a mush. And yes, if you over tap it, it will start to turn brown. So at one point you do have to stop. I am just doing this to show. In this step, I will be showing and evaluating my own art using the 4 techniques. This first painting I have is a replica of the painting that Monet did. To start off, I used a light wash on the sky of light blue, so that would be under the layering. And then I layered some more blue to indent the identification of clouds. As I used some gradient in this yellow to orange patch in her arm, but other than that I used mostly layering to make the dress. I did use dry brush in that grass area where I just dotted the paint of different greens and yellows onto the canvas until I got a more grassy texture that I wanted. My second piece is an eye. I know it looks quite strange. It's more of an abstract piece and doesn't really have much definition, but that is the point. I used the wet brush in most of this technique, wet on wet. As you can see, it kind of, this blurring sort of effect it has as we go along, and there is some layering to add in those details of the pupil, the lines in the eye, the eyelashes, etc. I have this sunset where I use the entire background of a gradient wash to give off that sunset feel in the sky. I used a layering and blending technique to fade the shadows from dark to light in the mountain. I did the same thing with the ice. With the sun, I made a simple layering technique to just show it was there. And lastly, I had these clouds that were initially layering. However, I blended them out to give a more faded look, so it looks more like clouds. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you come again. And if you need a little more help or instruction on how to do these techniques or how to apply them to your art, I have attached videos and pieces of artwork that I think help reflect the 4 techniques.